Hi. So today I needed to repair my winter coat that I've had for 3 years now, and I wear it almost every day. And since winter is coming very soon, I wanted to fix it because it had a tear on the side and two of the pockets were torn, had a hole in them, so I needed to fix them before the winter. I believe that it's very important to mend your clothing and repair what you already have. It's more sustainable and very good for the environment. And I think that everyone should learn how to fix at least some minor issues with their clothing. It's a good skill to have so that your clothing lasts longer. Other things also, like maybe a pillowcase or something like that. It's also a cheaper alternative to buying new things, and once again, way better for the environment. And that is something that is very important to me. I thought it would be good to share with you guys a bit of my tips on how to sew or mend your clothing. And I also wanted to go into a bit of detail on how I do my stitches, just to show you guys how to do it properly. Disclaimer: I am by no means a seamstress or have learned anything on how to sew more than just basic education from when I was in elementary school. So I am a complete beginner, so that is why I believe that if I can do it, so can you, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to work and be fixed. So here we go. So what you need is some thread that is in the same color as your fabric, some pins if necessary, some scissors, and a thimble. In this case, I'm using a leather thimble. Of course, you need a needle as well. So I'm using a leather thimble because I think it's way more comfortable than a normal thimble and it bends better. So first I needed to fix the big tear on the side of my coat, as you can see right there, and I am pinning it because it is so long and it will help me keep it straight and keep me from straying away in my stitching. So right here you can see the reason, or the main reason why I'm using a thimble is because of this rubber tag on the side there. You can kind of see me struggling to push the needle through. Right there. It's very tough if you don't have a thimble. It's gonna hurt a lot trying to hand sew this. So I would suggest maybe if you don't have a thimble, first of all get a thimble, but secondly you could also maybe use a machine to fix it, but I enjoy fixing my clothes in my hands. That's just my personal preference. I have nothing against machines. I like to pull out the pins when I reach the end of where the pin is pinning down the fabric. There's no correct way of taking out the pins that I know of, but that is just what I do, because I really don't want the fabric to shift too much, since I am such a beginner at sewing, and it is something that stresses me out a bit. So, since it was really hard to see what I was doing because the thread and the fabric were the same color, I decided to show the stitch on some scrap fabric with a colorful thread. So, when I start the whip stitch, I like to make a knot. It's not really necessary, but it makes me feel like the thread is nice and secure. And then I make one stitch and then I move on with my stitch. So a whip stitch is kind of diagonal, as you can see. You kind of catch the fabric that is on the bottom that you're stitching to the top, and then you go through the top fabric, and then you start the next stitch behind where your last stitch ended, and then you just repeat. I would also like to mention, for those that are complete beginners at sewing, to hold their needle's eye while you're sewing to make sure that your thread doesn't slip out of the needle's eye, and then you have to keep threading again. At the end of my stitch, I like to make another knot. I also make one stitch, and then finally I kind of hide the thread or bury it kind of in the stitch, just to make it nice and secure all the way at the end. You can tell that it's secure if you try to pull it and it doesn't come apart. Next up, I needed to fix holes in 2 of my pockets. I needed to get a bit crafty to sew these. Normally I would turn out the garment and sew from the inside of the garment, I guess. But I couldn't really do that because of the lining on the coat. So I just turned the pockets inside out. And the stitches that I used are kind of similar to a whip stitch. I don't know if there is a name for this type of stitch, but I will show you more in detail in the next clips. Just remember that when you're just sewing for yourself, stitching whatever way works and fixes what you need to fix is totally fine if you are okay with it. But of course, if you want to be very perfect or very ambitious, then you can do that as well. But for me, I am okay with things being very kind of crafty, kind of homemade, so that is what I do. So it's kind of hard to describe what I did for the stitch. Maybe it's because I'm not a native English speaker and I don't maybe have the vocabulary to describe what it's like. But it's kind of like a loop. I start the stitch similarly to the whip stitch. with a knot, just because that's what I'm used to doing, like I said before. And then I just kind of stitch from one side and pull it through the other side. And then in the end it closes off the hole, and that was the main aim, so I achieved that aim. Please let me know if there is a word, if this stitch has a name. I just did whatever I thought would work, as I've said before. So I also wanted to show you how to do a backstitch, since it comes in handy in many situations. So to start with, I make one straight stitch and then a knot, just like I did with the other stitches, and then another stitch, very similarly to the whip stitch. A backstitch goes straight, and you start each stitch behind where you ended the last one, and you can make it as small or as large as you want to. The smaller the distance between the stitches, the more secure it is. Just like before, I end the stitch with a knot at the end and another stitch. Two stitches just to make sure. And then I clip it off and do the pull test. And since I can't pull it apart, it's nice and secure, and I did it correctly. So I hope you found this helpful and that you feel inspired to fix your clothing next time something happens to them, instead of throwing them away or getting some new clothes. I think it's extremely important that we learn how to mend our things instead of throwing them away. I feel like these days people are so quick to just throw away perfectly good clothing to get something new. Same goes for many other things like electronics and home appliances, furniture, whatever it may be. This is something that I feel very strongly about, so I wanted to share this with you. So if you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. And I thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.